Alright, good evening everyone. Today I'll be going through some of the common errors that appear in your writing. I've been marking your compositions, I think probably about 15 or 16 of them this year alone, and I've noticed some common errors that crop up every now and again, especially when you are in a hurry and you are trying to write your composition under time pressure. Now remember, on Tuesday when you're sitting for your composition exam, you will only be given 50 minutes to finish your entire composition. Now that is time pressure, which means that you will need to read the theme, look at the picture, think of a story that you want to write, and then very quickly sketch out a plan, a story mountain, or some kind of a visual representation of your story, all within a very short amount of time. And then you have to write, and then you have to review. Remember, we use cups and arms to make sure that we've not made any grammatical or language errors. And all of that has to take place within 15 minutes, 50. That's a lot of things to do in a very short amount of time. So it would be good as we go forward into the exams to have some of these common mistakes in mind so that as we are writing during the exams, we will kind of be alert and conscious that we don't make these mistakes and we'll waste less time having to correct them later on, or worse still, having to have marks deducted because we made these mistakes without even knowing that we made them, okay? So I'm just going to go through some of the common ones. There are obviously more mistakes than this that we sometimes make when we write, and there are a lot more spelling errors. I'll cover that towards the end of today's presentation. It's going to be a really short presentation today. I'm aiming for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour maximum if there aren't too many questions. And after this presentation, as usual, I will post this video on Edmodo, and you'll be able to see the video together with the notes that I'm referring to, the PowerPoint slide, and the document containing the commonly misspelled words, all attached in that same message in Edmodo. So if you haven't done so already, I recommend that you go over to Edmodo Down and download the PowerPoint slide, Common Writing Errors, and the Word document, Commonly Misspelled Words. Okay, you can refer to them as we go along. Okay, let me see. Hello, hi Titi, welcome. Okay, I'm going to begin with some common writing errors that we face as we write our compositions, okay? So I'm going to put the chat window at the bottom here, and I'll refer to it every now and again, but today I won't be going too much into the chat because I want to keep this presentation short so that you guys can go back to your revision and rest. I don't want to make this too long of a session. It'll probably be about half an hour. All right. Now, common writing errors. I'll begin with the theme, okay? Now, very often, when we are very excited and we want to plunge right into writing, we have a tendency to rush into writing our stories with the first thing that comes to our mind, right? We already have some rough idea, and then we get carried away with writing our story, and we forget that we're actually supposed to write according to the theme that is given to us. In this case, the theme is an honest act, okay? So remember, we just did this. We wrote about an honest act happening in, I believe it was a library or something very similar to that. Now, this is an example of one of the students from our class who wrote this story. And in this story, you will see an example of both a wrong and a right way to engage the theme. And this is very important because if you write not according to the theme, you write only according to your own story, and you ignore the theme, you will fail. It's inevitable. You will definitely fail your content, okay? So, an honest act. Take a look at the first example, right? This is the wrong way to approach writing a story about an honest act. So, if your story is about a boy, right, who steals his friend's mobile phone, and who is then caught when his friend confronts him, okay? So, your main character is a boy who steals a mobile phone from his friend and then takes the mobile phone away, but is later on caught or confronted by his friend, the friend from whom he stole the phone. Now, the friend forgives him and then gives him another chance, so they continue to be friends and the story ends. Do you think this is the correct way to write the theme of this particular composition on an honest act? Hi Ingrid, welcome. Right, I think you'll agree with me that this is not the right way, right? Because if it's about an honest act, then the character must be honest. There must be a story that is built around a person doing something honest, struggling maybe, struggling to do the right thing, but in the end, doing the right and honest thing. So in the first case, in the wrong example, you find that the character does not do the right thing. It is the friend who confronts him and then gives him another chance. This is not a story of an honest act, and you will fail your content. In this case, I gave this student only 3 out of 10 for her content. All right? So you must be very careful when you're writing a story that you do not write out of point. If it's an honest act, your story must be about someone who does something honest. And the honesty is what will get your marks, nothing else. So if you're writing about forgiveness or second chances, you will fail your content because your story is not centered around an honest act. On the other hand, let's look at the right example at the bottom here, right? If your story is about a boy, same thing, who steals his friend's mobile phone in a moment of greed, right? He's really greedy, the phone is really amazing, he wants it, but then immediately he regrets his actions, right? After he takes the phone, he feels horrible, he feels remorseful or sorry for what he has done. And then he returns the phone, either to the person who he stole it from, or to maybe the librarian, or to an adult. And then he confesses and apologizes for his act of stealing. Now that is an honest act. That is being honest. Even though that character or that person may get punished, he or she is being honest. And if your story is about that act, then you will certainly score very high. So in this case, I would give this student who writes this particular story an 8 out of 10 for content. Can you see the big difference? In the first case, 3 out of 10. In the second case, 8 out of 10. That's a 5-mark difference just for content alone. I'm not even looking at language yet. I'm just looking at content. 8 marks versus 3 marks. That's a lot of difference just in the content alone. So be very careful when you're thinking about and writing your theme on Tuesday. Do not make the mistake of rushing into the story and then finding out that, oh no, I'm not writing according to the theme or the picture that is given to me, and then you will fail your content. So take a moment when you look at the question paper to really think about the story you want to write and to make sure that your ideas line up with the theme, which is an honest act, or whatever theme is given to you on Tuesday. Okay, be very careful, read the theme, use the words of the theme in your story if you need to. Make sure you don't write out of point. Because, let me be very honest with you, right? You could also write about finding a phone and giving it back to the owner. That is an honest act, that is correct. To be very honest with all of you, I have had many good writers who have failed. Not because they write poorly, they write very well, they have very good language, they have very accurate grammar structures, but they write out of point, right? They write a story that is not relevant to the theme, and as a result, the teachers are forced to fail you for content. And the moment you fail content, let's say you get 3 out of 10 for content, even if you get 6 out of 10 for your language, you add them together, it's a 9 out of 20. You still fail your composition, and that's a major fail. Alright, so be very careful that you don't ever fail your content. And to pass your content is very simple. Simply write according to the theme. But remember, we don't just want to pass, we want to do really well. So you must put as much of your story around the theme as possible. So in this case, for an honest act, I want to be writing a lot about the struggle that my character goes through to do the right thing or to be honest. And the more I write about the honesty, about the struggling to be honest, or like Tse Ting said, the struggle to return the phone, even though the phone is such a good phone, you want to keep it, but you struggle with yourself. And then after, debating, the angel says this, the devil says that, whatever, some of you like to write about the angel and the devil in your head, right? After all of that struggle, you decide to do the right thing. That will give you a very good content score. Because most of your story, the climax of your story, is the struggle in you to do the right thing, to be honest. And that will give you between an 8 to a 10 out of 10 for your content. So be careful that you don't write an incorrect theme. That is a very big problem when it comes to composition writing. Good writers struggle with this. Bad writers struggle with this. It's a problem for everyone. Read the theme, look at the picture and follow the theme and the picture in your writing. Okay, this will end by about 7:30 Ingrid. It won't take very long. It's a short video. Is that okay? All right. So next, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so you all are familiar with this subject-verb agreement rule. Take a look at the first example. They was getting ready to sing the national anthem. Now, this was a sentence I also took from one of your compositions. This is a mistake that many of you make. They, right, is a subject, and the subject is many. So therefore, there should be no s after the verb. So they were getting ready. Oops, sorry, there's a mistake right there. Okay, let me just correct that. They were getting ready, there should be a Y here. They were getting ready to sing the national anthem. Okay, so they was wrong. They were right. One puts s after the verb, many no s after the verb. Subject-verb agreement rule must be followed at every sentence that you write in your composition. So check for your subject-verb agreement rule, okay? And of course, I'm sure you can guess what's the next one. It's inconsistent tenses, okay? Now, most of your story will be written in the past tense. Past continuous, past perfect, simple past tense. However, if you are writing thought text, right? If you're writing dialogue, then you may use present tense in your thought text and in your dialogue. But other than thought text and dialogue, your narrative, your story, should be in the past tense. Now, this happens when you have very long sentences. Sometimes you start with the correct tense, the past tense, but then halfway through the sentence, you forget and you use the present tense. Let's take a look at this example, right? James saw Alex. So saw is in the correct tense, it's in the past tense, but he was unsure if he wanted to tell the teacher. Can you see that this student here, again, this is a real example in one of your compos. This student lost track of his tenses. The first one was correct, saw, but the second one is wrong, want. This is the present tense. It should be wanted, right? So make sure you check, especially when you're writing very long sentences, that you do not forget that your tenses must be consistently in the past throughout. And let me say this, do not make your sentences too long. If you cannot read your sentence in one breath, your sentence is too long. Try to stop it and then start a second sentence rather than having a super long sentence that's very hard for you to check for tenses, okay? So sentences in one breath is a very good measure of a good length. A sentence that's longer than one breath, you have to take a second breath. That means the sentence is too long. Try to break it into two shorter sentences, okay? So the correct answer should be James saw Alex, but he was unsure if he wanted to tell the teacher. So saw, wanted. Two verbs in a very long sentence, they must be in the same past tense. All right? Are there any questions so far? Right, I think it should be quite simple. I'll take this chance to check. All right, hello everyone. Okay, wonderful. Okay, let's move on. So the next one is apostrophes, right? So a lot of times when we want to say that something belongs to someone, we forget to put the apostrophe s. Okay, so the boys were unable to find Jun Xian phone. Okay, so it's Jun Xian's phone with the apostrophe s. Now be very careful. If your character's name ends with an s, you don't put an apostrophe s, you put just an apostrophe after the s, as in the case of James right here. James with an apostrophe after the s. Be very careful you don't forget this, because this is a very common mistake that many students make. They are so excited they miss out that little tail, that little dot on the top that tells you that the phone belongs to Jun Xian or that the phone belongs to James. Okay? Right? So that's the apostrophe. Next, today and tomorrow. Many of you like to do this. Because you are telling me a story that happened in the past, you like to tell me it was John's birthday today, or it was John's birthday tomorrow. Remember, you can't use today or tomorrow unless you are talking right now in the present. I'm saying that this is today. I'm saying that it's tomorrow. Right now I can say this, but when I'm telling you a story, I have to change today and tomorrow to that day and the next day. And if you find this familiar, it's because this is synthesis, right? We learned in synthesis that when we do from direct to indirect speech, right? Someone said something, right? I'm going to the zoo today, right? John said, I'm going to the zoo today. When we open it up to indirect speech, it becomes John said that he was going to the zoo that day, right? Because I'm reporting what happened in the past. Same thing, my story is reporting something that happened in the past, so I can't use today or tomorrow or next week or next month. I've got to use that day, the next day, the following week, the following month. It's the same as synthesis, okay? So it's quite nice that everything kind of connects with each other, even in writing. All right, so today, tomorrow. Don't use these words, today, tomorrow. Use that day, the next week, that week. All right, then. Don't use today or tomorrow. Wonderful. Okay, no questions? Great. Let's go to the next slide. Contractions. Okay, this is another very common mistake. Some of you, when you talk, you use contractions. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't have the patience. I don't, I can't, I won't. Don't ever use contractions in your formal writing, your compo writing, because it's considered informal and it shouldn't be informal writing. So when you're writing a composition, always use the full form. In other words, instead of couldn't, say I could not take it anymore. Instead of didn't, say I did not have the patience. Okay? So expanded, don't use the apostrophe to contract the two words into one. That's not allowed in formal writing. Right? So make a habit of it. Don't ever use contractions. Just say could not, did not, should not, would not. Okay? That's contractions. Next one, common error, mother, father. Right? We often do this, right? We often say, I called my mom, or I called my dad, or I called mom, or I called dad. Okay? Or I called grandma, or I called grandpa. Be very careful. In formal writing, we can't use mom or dad, or grandma or grandpa. We use formal terms like mother, father. Okay, if you are talking about my mother, my father, then mother and father don't need to be in capital letters. Okay, but if you are not going to say the word my, then you have to use mother and father as titles, as proper nouns, meaning they have to be capitalized. Mother with a capital M, father with a capital F. Okay, so I called my mother, or I called mother, right, with a capital M. All right, or father with a capital F. In fact, don't try, never use mum or dad in formal writing. All right, you can use it in speech, but even then it's rather informal. In oral, it would be good to address your parents as father or mother, or my father or my mother. It will be a good practice, okay? All right, good. Next, let's cover some common Singlish expressions that creep into our writing and affect our grammar, okay? We're coming to the end of the presentation. Like I said, this is really very short. I'll take some question and answer sessions if you have any. If not, then we'll end the session very quickly. You guys can go back to what you're doing. So, first part, Singlish. So, wrong. You must never say he had read finished his book, or he had done finish his work, or he had watched finish the cartoon. The word finish must always come first. So, he had finished reading his book. He had finished watching the cartoons. He had finished eating his lunch. You cannot say he eat finish, right? It's finished eating. So always remember, if you're using the word finished, finished comes first. So remember F, finished comes first. He had finished reading his book. He had finished eating his meal. He had finished writing his composition, right? Finished followed by the verb. Okay? The second common mistake is lend and borrow. Okay? As a rule, we usually don't use the word lend, right? Because lend is to lend someone something. We use the word borrow. So I need to borrow your pencil. I need to borrow your ruler. James wanted to borrow my stationery. He wanted to borrow a book from the library. You don't lend a book, lend stationery, lend phones, or lend pens or pencils, okay? So don't use the word lend when you're trying to get something. It's borrow, okay? That's the second common Singlish error. Third, y'all like to use the word play his phone, play a prank, okay? Now, you must understand that this is Singlish because playing always comes with a preposition, okay? So, playing a game on his phone, right? Playing a game in the park, right? Playing a game on the television, on the PlayStation. Okay, so playing is a verb that always takes on some kind of preposition. Okay, a preposition is a word that tells you the position of the verb. So playing on his phone, playing in the park, all right? So be very careful that when you use the word playing, don't say he was playing his phone, right? James wanted to play my phone. You can't play the phone, right? The phone is not a musical instrument. You can play a musical instrument. You can play a flute, you can play a guitar, you can play a trumpet, but you can't play a phone, right? If you want to use the word play without a preposition, it has to be some kind of musical instrument, okay? Jaden asked, what about if I say I am finished? Yes, then that's fine because you are using the word finished without a verb, right? This only applies if you are using finish with a verb. So you must never put the verb in front. In other words, read finish. But you can say finished reading. But if you say I am finished, then there's no verb. That's fine. There isn't an issue at all, okay, Jaden? So I hope that answers your question. Right. So let me recap. Singlish, first one, finished always comes first. Right? Finish reading, finish eating, finish singing, finish swimming. Okay. Second, borrow, not lend. I need to borrow your pencil. I need to borrow your ruler. I need to borrow your phone. Third, playing always takes on a preposition. So I was playing on his phone. I was playing in the park. I was playing on the computer. Never playing computer, playing phone, right? Because you play an instrument. I was playing the guitar. I was playing the flute. I was playing the trumpet. But I was playing on my phone, right? I was playing a game on my phone, okay? Let's go on to part 2. Okay, I hope I answered that question for you, Jaden. No, sorry, that's Jaden, okay? Right, let's move on. Singlish part 2. Right, fourth error. Right, a lot of you like to do this. You like to say his parents, or I said no, or I said yes, or I said sorry. That's a Singlish expression that is never found in English. You don't say something. You use the word to tell me what you've just done. So his parents said no is wrong. His parents refused, right? Or his parents said yes. His parents agreed, right? Or his parents said sorry. A lot of you like to say, then he said sorry. Don't use the word said sorry. Use the word apologized. There is no such thing as said sorry, okay? It's awkward, it's Singlish, it's not proper English. Use the word apologized, okay? So when he did something wrong, he apologized, not he said sorry. When he agrees to do something, he agreed, not he said yes or he said no. Remember this, I don't want you to overuse the word said, okay? If he said yes, say agreed. If he said no, say refused. If he said sorry, say apologized. All right? And the final Singlish error I'm going to talk about today is copy, the word copy. Copy Alan, right? So, copy my work, right? These are all Singlish expressions. He decided to copy Alan's answers. He decided to take down Alan's answers. These are all proper English expressions. So be very careful that you don't let Singlish creep into your writing without being aware of it. Okay, so I'm more or less done with this main part of the errors. I'm going to introduce you to some commonly misspelled words. I've attached a document onto Edmodo. There are about 100 words, but they're very common words. Most of you are familiar with them. It's just so that you can see. Let me just show you very quickly. Right, so these are the words. I've categorized them from A to Z in order of common occurrence. So these words often appear, and they don't just appear in your composition, they also appear in your editing, right? So when you're editing, a lot of times in your exams, you have to change the wrongly spelled word to the correct word, or you have to put in this word in your comprehension clause and you spell it wrongly. So look through these words. They are pretty common words. If you're not sure about the meaning, just Google it, right? Some of these words may be unfamiliar to you, but these words will very often appear in primary 5, primary 6 as well. So this is a good list to have handy and to revise frequently, so that you are always in your mind alert to not making these errors in spelling these very commonly misspelled words. Even adults will spell these words wrongly. I would even say even Mr. Pang would sometimes spell some of these words wrongly if I'm not careful. So be very careful. Okay? Alright. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? All right. Okay, good. It looks like everybody's okay. So that's it for tonight. It's a very simple presentation. I'm going through some of these commonly misspelled words, commonly committed mistakes when we write a composition. I hope this is useful to all of you. Remember to review this. The video is rather short, so I should be able to edit it and post it really soon. It'll be up on Edmodo, so review it. Look at the PowerPoint slide and the Word document. Look through it to see if there are any questions that you have after this presentation is over. And if not, I will end the presentation very shortly. Thank you very much for paying attention and taking the time to spend the last 25 minutes with me, okay? Again, if you have any questions at all, let me know and I will gladly answer you. Okay, wonderful.